In the late capitalist visual economy, death no longer arrives as a private, inevitable end. It is staged, aestheticized, and sold. A cultural performance mediated by images. In the context of amusement culture, theme parks, haunted houses, and thrill rides simulate our demise in order to provoke thrill or catharsis. Meanwhile, video games turn death into a mechanic to learn from, not a failure to avoid. In these spaces, we meet mortality in safe, repeatable form, stripped of its real-world consequences. And this is spectacular death. Mortality not denied, but redistributed across cultural sites where it is repetitively reenacted. In this translation, from reality to entertainment, death acquires a paradoxical duality. It both obscures and reveals, trivializes and ritualizes. And still, even within such commodification, spectators may construct personal and ethical engagements with death's meaning. The spectacle is not a monolith. It is porous, fractured. Audiences notice the artifice, and in those cracks, they find room for irony, critique, even intimacy. Here, death is not an ending. It is a loop, a mechanic, a narrative device. It is a ride we can queue for again. Here lies the paradox that drew me in. If death can become a spectacle, staged, looped, and sold, then that spectacle can also be redesigned. So my project opens with the deliberate creation of a spectacle of death, born from the language of amusement culture, as an invitation to explore the layered and even contradictory meanings of mortality. In the first term of my master's, I developed 3 guiding principles for my horror storytelling. These formed the creative foundation on which I began building this project. With these principles in place, I set out to test them on a broader cultural scale. My initial approach was comparative, mapping large-scale death events across history, each distilled into a single philosophy of mortality. But the deeper I studied the spectacle, the clearer it became that its perspectives are rarely singular. They are layered, sensitive, and often in tension. This realization prompted a turning point in my research. I narrowed my scope to the mythic narratives of East Asia, where a single spectacle can carry multiple, even contradictory ideologies at once. This thematic focus was reinforced by my academic work. These studies also confirmed another decision. The amusement park would be the stage for my designed spectacle of death. With the conceptual framework in place, I drew on the skills courses to build the technical foundation for realizing this vision. Starting from zero, I learned Unreal Engine and Blender using Blueprint to build core gameplay mechanics, and learning both organic modeling and skeletal rigging to animate environments and rides. This process shaped the project's production model, an interactive game built in Unreal Engine, supported by animation sequences created in Blender. In this way, every course I've taken throughout my master's has prepared me for this final project. Colossus is the synthesis of a year's learning, where research, design, and technical practice converge into a single, unified creation. At the heart of Colossus lies a speculative setting, an abandoned amusement park built upon the fossilized corpse of a mythic beast, submerged in the petrifying waters of Lake Natron in Tanzania. Once envisioned by techno-capitalist Caden Locke as a laboratory for the deification of death, the park was designed to achieve Locke's true obsession, engineered immortality. But for reasons unknown, the project was left to decay, its rides scattered like relics across the monster's body. These scattered attractions number 3 in total, each inspired by an East Asian myth of death. The game's demo focuses on the first, a roller coaster based on the Neja legend, Lotus Rebirth. Neja is a secular deity in Chinese mythology, a boy born with semi-divine power who rebels against the order of the sea, slays the Dragon King's son, and is forced to take his own life under the coercion of the Dragon Palace, a symbol of imperial authority. In the end, he is resurrected within a lotus flower. His suicide is one of the most radical acts in the history of Chinese mythological literature, a moment that openly confronts the body's ownership, the limits of duty, and the cost of defiance. In my adaptation, Nejia's death becomes the centerpiece of a designed spectacle, staged to open 3 intertwined debates on mortality. Through Lotus Rebirth, I invite players to reflect on the layered and contradictory philosophies of death within this myth. Colossus is a narrative-driven exploration game where 3 interwoven storylines guide the experience. Nejia's death, the abandonment of the Colossus Park, and the mystery of the player's identity, philosophical reflection prompted through the collecting. Through interaction with park staff NPCs, players receive tasks and narrative cues. Progress is achieved by completing 3 exploration loops, collecting Nejia's remains, assembling coaster parts, and ultimately restoring and activating the ride. Inspired by Bloodborne's vertical level design, the map unfolds through a rhythm of descent and ascent. Players traverse dramatic height differences, repeatedly glimpsing distant objectives, only to return and reapproach them later. The Nega Coaster unfolds through 3 exploration loops, each following the same rhythm: give, receive, and sacrifice again, tying gameplay mechanics to a deeper allegory of death and sacrifice. Loop 1, Patriarchal Home. Players sacrifice their own health through ritual to unlock hidden paths, receiving the Staghorn Bone Seed. This act echoes Nejia's defiance of Confucian tradition, the belief that one's body belongs to one's parents. His suicide becomes an act of rebellion against patriarchal control over life and death. For the player, this is also the first moment of self-sacrifice. Loop 2, Memorial Shrine. Here, players burn Cadenlock's commemorative banknotes to make offerings at the Earth God Shrine, gaining access to Nejia's temple and receiving the Lotus Engine. Money here symbolizes desire, while the banknotes expose Caden's attempt to commodify mortality through capitalist ritual. This loop represents the boldest adaptation of the Nejia myth. His death is redefined as a public cult, his body divided among worshippers, temples built in his name, and the Lotus device sustaining a collective fantasy of his return. But the truth remains. Nejia was never resurrected. His bones are forever scattered, memorialized yet forgotten. Loop 3, Drowned Chentang Pass. This final stage reveals the player's hidden role as an engineer sent to repair the coaster. To progress, the player must surrender their only remaining ID card, the last trace of their true past, in order to open a staff passage. Inside the flooded town of Chentang Pass, they recover the wind-fire wheels. Here, Negia's ultimate sacrifice comes into focus. He was not born revered as a god, but was instead forced into death by the weight of social expectation. His divine power set him apart, and for that very reason, society demanded his death. This loop transforms Nejia's end into a meditation on death as a social obligation, imposed rather than chosen. Across all 3 loops, the player's journey is structured as a progressive reenactment of Nejia's sacrifice. Through the player's repeated acts of self-sacrifice, Nejia's own ordeal is mirrored in gameplay, while the environment, a hybrid of traditional Chinese architecture and decayed industrial forms, frames the experience within a distinct vintage amusement aesthetic. In this way, narrative, mechanics, spatial design, and visual style are fully interwoven, underscoring the project's structural rigor. Once all fragments are gathered, the coaster functions as the culminating reward. Over its course, the coaster undergoes 2 transformations, shifting into 3 distinct modes. It traverses the key sites of the previous explosion loops, each reanimated through spectacular kinetic sequences that dramatize their narrative significance. In its later passages, the ride also passes adjacent attractions within the park, establishing a structural continuity and planting narrative traces for what follows. Lotus Rebirth is only the first of 3 attractions. The sequence extends with Obisuit's Hollow Peak and Moon Palace Orbit. Together, the 3 rides form a triptych of death spectacles, self, society, and the future, each refracting mortality through a different lens. Meanwhile, scattered across the park, cultural symbols, fractured sculptures, and the fates of its NPCs weave a world still waiting to be uncovered and invite players to continue reading, questioning, and discovering within the cracks of this vast design. Colossus is not merely an artistic speculation. It is a critical design fiction, a thanatological architecture, a spectacle of dying. The park breathes where the monster has fallen, and we, no longer visitors, must decide whether to breathe with it or fall with it. We no longer build monuments to the dead. Now, we build spectacular parks and let the dead ride.